Zimdars, and welcome back to Ghouls Night In, the spooky chat show with your best ghoul friends. I'm Penny Snark.
And I'm Midge Munster. And Penny, today I want to take another trip back in time to
Mm,
reminisce on things that made us the Halloween nerds that we are today.
always a good time.
Yeah, especially with it being so close to Halloween now.
Mm.
I had to chat about. I can't believe actually that I've never brought this to the pod yet. Um, but for me personally, there is like no bigger root of my love of Halloween than Ray Bradbury's The Halloween Tree.
Mm.
And
Good,
so,
good, good root reference
oh,
there. I
oh,
like that with the tree.
can I truly tell you that that was an accident? I'm just so naturally clever. It just like
It
happens.
just
I don't even.
flows right out of you.
I just it just comes right out. That's funny. I even like wrote that down and didn't think like, tee that's a joke. Okay, anyway. So this story is such a big deal for me growing up. Specifically the movie version, but we're gonna talk about both. But my family was really heavy on traditions across the
Mhm.
board, all holidays. So I feel like I'm doing Golden Girls. I'm like, picture it, Halloween 1997. Um, but like every Halloween for the entirety that I was in my family's home, basically, we would have the same meal every Halloween night. We always listened to the same Halloween hits cassette tape that I
Of
could I
course.
could probably like still give you that track list from memory. And a very special day, a few days before Halloween, one of my parents would take me right on down to that mid-continent public library, and we would rent two things. One was a positively ridiculous instructional VHS called Party Makeup. And this has nothing to do with this episode, but I want to know if any of you out there ever watched this VHS. I have scoured the planet for this, whatever this
Ooh.
was. So if by some chance you're listening to this and you also watched Party Makeup, please tell me. Because it was literally, I'm sure it was made by a makeup company or something. It was just a VHS that taught you how to apply different Halloween looks with those like crappy grease paint
Oh yeah, sure.
palettes from the drugstore, but they did like a vampire and a witch, and I watched that shit on repeat for the like, I don't know, how long was a VHS checkout from the library? Like a week probably.
Yeah, probably.
I watched that. Early signs of neurodivergence. I was like, I could watch this strange lady paint this child's face as a vampire all day,
I
and
mean,
I
I feel
did.
like you really had a premonition of like how popular makeup tutorials and like
I miss my
even like
calling.
demonstrations are. Like
Yeah.
now people just watch the TikTok of people putting on makeup, but you had to get the VHS from the library.
I know. I could have been like one of the big beauty bloggers, but it just wasn't meant to
Yeah,
be.
just vampire makeup.
I could have had a YouTube channel called Party Makeup and I could
Yeah.
have just done Halloween instructional videos. Too late. So sad. Anyway,
Mm.
um, but that's a total side note. The other thing we rented that was so important was the VHS of the 1993 made for TV Hanna-Barbera film, The Halloween Tree.
Mhm.
And I think, I don't know how we always managed to snag it the week of Halloween, but I watched that every Halloween night from the time that I was born, basically, because it came out in 93, which is the year
Yeah.
I was born, until I moved out of my parents' house. Like, always watched it. Um, and this story as a whole really just captures the essence of Halloween for me, both the original 1972 novel and the 93 film adaptation. Um, but before we really like digest all there is to do here, Penny, do you have any childhood or prior experience with either the novel or the film?
I do. I would definitely not as like formative as you have, but I
Hmm.
definitely remember watching this TV special when I was a kid. Like if I remember watching it. I don't think we watched it every year, but it was definitely like in the rotation of like Halloween things that you would watch along with,
Good, good.
Great Pumpkin and all that kind of stuff. So I had definitely seen it, but I would not say it didn't make as big of a mark on my child brain.
Sure. Yeah, well,
But it would be hard. It would be hard to match
you
your.
know what's crazy too, when I was like reading about this, it kept referring to it as like the Cartoon Network special. And I was like, whoa, I guess that probably is how most people saw it. But we didn't have cable.
Oh yeah.
Like I didn't have cable until I was in like high school. So yeah, that I was like shocked because this was one of those things that I feel like I saw as a kid and then was like, where did it come from?
Right.
How did we get here? And
How
then
did this happen?
everybody else with their like rich person cable was just like, yeah, it's on Cartoon Network. Turn it to channel 58. Uh, but anywho, so as we've mentioned already, this is a story by Ray Bradbury. And for most people, I think when you hear that name, you're probably automatically getting like high school literature flashbacks to having to read Fahrenheit
Sure.
451. It's probably his best known work, but a lot of people I don't think are familiar about this story or that Ray Bradbury had like a deep love of Halloween. The story, The Halloween Tree, was born out of his lifelong love for the holiday. And as a child, he had like a lot of fond memories of the atmosphere and all of that, as so many of us do.
Hmm.
But he also, which I think a lot of us, specifically on this podcast, do, he also really always viewed it as a time of reflection, of celebration of life and death and the cycle of life and the
Hmm.
seasons. And even though he would move on in his life to live in places like Tucson and LA, Bradbury was born in Illinois and spent a good chunk of his youth there. And you can definitely feel the Midwest vibes
Yes,
in,
definitely.
in this movie and in the story in general. Um, so he originally wrote The Halloween Tree in the 1950s, and began writing it as a screenplay for a Halloween time film, and it just never got picked up to be produced. So later he tailored it and released it as the 1972 novel.
Hmm.
If you've never read this book, it's definitely worth picking up, first of all, for a quick October read. It's only, I want to say it's like 100 pages. It's
Oh wow,
not,
yeah.
yeah, it's very short. You can read it pretty fast. There's also a really good audiobook on Audible that you could knock out in an evening. I think it's like right around the 3 hour mark. And the narration's really, really good. But as a general plot, the story follows a group of kids on Halloween night, and they all meet up to go trick or treating to find that one of their friends, Pipkin, is not present. And Pipkin is the Penny or Midge of this friend group. He he is the Halloween guy.
The spooky boy.
He is the spooky boy. And so his friends are like, Pip would never miss trick or treating. What is going on? And so they run to his house to find him being carted away in an ambulance. Pretty dark stuff
Hmm.
for a children's story. But that's, of course, what I like about this.
Yes.
And I think why it had such an impression on me as a child. But they end up on a big whirlwind adventure through time and space and all across different cultures, learning about the origins and traditions of Halloween and looking for the soul of their sick friend Pipkin.
Hmm.
And their guide is this spicy little number by the name of Carapace, Clavicle, Moundshroud.
Sure.
What an absolute banger of a name, Bradbury. I would like to give you your round of applause for that one. But he takes them on this adventure, and throughout each stop they talk about how different cultures view death, how they how they preserve their dead, how they bury their dead. They spend time with the Egyptians and in Mexico, and they also do some uh, focusing on like Celtic traditions and
Mhm.
things centering around the history of witches. Very, very cool. And at its core, this is definitely like a coming of age story. All these kids are around the age where you're starting to face the idea of like growing up and mortality in general. And they're also, I don't know why this like it kicks me in the gut. Like they're also all so clearly at the age where it's probably like one of their last year's trick or treating,
Oh, yeah.
which makes me like
I know, it's so tragic. Ugh.
yeah. Well, and I just love this use of, and I mean it's certainly not the only or first story to ever do this, but this use of Halloween as a and trick or treating as a representation of innocence and
Mhm.
what it means to be a child. Because I was thinking about this when I was writing this episode. I was like, man, trick or treating is one of the like very few things that you can't like keep doing as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like even if you're a person who doesn't care about societal norms, like Penny and I still both do a lot of weird crap that people are
Yes.
like, you shouldn't do that, you're 30. But yeah, this is like one of the things that you can't do this anymore as an adult, and
No, no.
it's really,
Exclusive to childhood.
yeah, and it's just really, it's a sad time when you realize you probably won't be going next year.
Yeah, it's
um
the changing seasons of your life.
exactly. So there's, that, but there's also, of course, the children coping with their sick friend who is, we learn through the course of this story, is dying. And so it also casts a really bright light on just life and death and the loss of innocence. Uh, this is also very much like baby's first Halloween history book.
Yeah.
On top of that, like I said, he uses the story to explore all these different cultural beliefs about death and the afterlife. Um, and I love this because it really shows how, it's kind of like when people are like, music is a universal language. Like that's kind of how this story feels, of like Halloween, or the
Mhm.
what it represents transcends culture, transcends language, transcends time. It's something that has always been around in its own way, and I just love, I like, so much of what I know today as an adult about the history of Halloween is because of this story.
Yeah, totally, and
um,
you get kind of those first roots of like, "Oh, I there's a story behind this. I'm
right.
intrigued." And, maybe as you get older, you dig in more and, host a podcast about it or something
Something.
relatable like
Yeah.
that. But no, yeah, I definitely remember, like, when I've, heard, like, Halloween history things, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I feel like I knew that. Where did I first hear that?" And I'm like, "It was probably the Halloween tree."
We might have talked about it in the episode. Stonehenge is in this.
Oh,
In the film
yeah.
version, and I remember when you brought Stonehenge to the pod, I was like, oh, the first time I learned about Stonehenge was,
The Halloween tree.
I also have a really specific memory of this, the movie version being the first time I ever heard the word ravine and had to learn what
Ooh.
a ravine was, which is kind of like an ooky spooky word anyway.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, so we have the book, and then, like I said, 93, it's adapted into the animated film by Hanna-Barbera Animation, which, of course, we all, I feel like, know from Scoobert Doobert. This is the
Hell yeah.
this is the Scooby-Doo animation house, along with many other things, the
True, yes.
Jetsons, Yogi Bear, lots of stuff comes from
Uh,
Hanna-Barbera. The
we have talked about
Flintstones.
about Scoobert on this very show, so
Yeah, but I feel like we probably have a lot of Scoobert Doo watchers in this audience. But a very specific animation style and like
Mhm.
capsule of, when I think of that style, that's my childhood watching cartoons. Uh,
Yeah, and it is interesting. I feel like I was surprised to when I first looked up the Halloween tree and found out that it came out in the 90s. I think possibly because, like, Hanna-Barbera is such like a long-running studio, and I
Right.
definitely grew up watching like the really old stuff. So I was just kind of like, oh, well, this must be from like the 70s or something.
And it has this weird out of date feel in a
Yeah.
good way. I mean that
It's kind of
positively.
timeless. Yeah.
Yes, and I wonder if maybe they did that because the novel is from 72. Maybe they
hmm
were trying to kind of capture that older feeling, but it does. It feels like it exists outside of time a little bit, which is
Yeah.
really fun. So the screenplay was actually adapted by Ray Bradbury, which is
Oh,
very
nice.
cool. Very
Yeah.
rarely do we get author collaboration on a film adaptation.
hmm
And he himself provides the narration for the film as well. The narrator, much like Pushing Daisies, is like its own character and very present throughout the film. And Ray Bradbury does a really great job. I love his speaking voice for this. Uh, it overall like remains pretty true to the book, with a few key differences. There are way less kids, first of all. So I did this kind of backwards. I obviously saw the movie as a child,
Sure.
so I,
Yeah, of
I didn't
course.
read the story until I was older. I'd say maybe not even till college did I actually read the book. And there's 8 children in the
Ooh.
book, but and then plus Pipkin, so there's 9 children in the book. In the movie, there are 4 kids plus Pipkin, so 5 total.
Yeah.
Way more manageable.
Definitely. They're like, we're not animating all of this. You can have four.
And even like the 4 that we have are very, I mean, it's a kids program, so it's like they're not fleshed out
No.
characters. I saw one guy talking about this and made me laugh really hard. He was like, "Yeah, and Ralph, which is like the mummy kid, they're, they're like his personality is he has glasses."
I feel like in like
Yeah,
80s and 90s
exactly.
cartoons that is definitely a character is the kid who has glasses.
Right, and I was like laughing because it was stupid, but I was like, man, that was a thing. Like
Yep.
people's character has glasses. Um, but And we also get a female character in the film, which in the book, all 9 trick or treaters are boys.
9 dudes.
9 dudes, the scariest thing of all. 9 men in one
Ugh.
location. Uh, so we do get Jenny in the film version, and
Hey.
hey, and I loved her growing up. I was like, she is that bitch. I also really love the design of the kids' costumes in the movie. We have Tom Skelton, who is a skeleton. Ha ha ha.
Of course.
Then Jenny's a witch. Ralph's a mummy with glasses. And then Wally he's like a just a classic monster. And something I always thought was really dope was Jenny's a witch, but she has like a hag witch mask, like this gross, like green, spooky witch mask. And then she rides a bike like through the whole movie, and she stuck a broom through like both sides of her bike spindles, which probably like is not safe at all in real life. But
Sure.
for the purpose of the film, it was like it looked like she was riding a broom, and I was like, that is the coolest girl
Right. She's
I
so
have ever
smart.
seen. And she
I have
was
I
very
mostly remember the mummy kid. Like
has
if I
glasses.
if I, if I try to like imagine like the Halloween tree in my brain, I'm like mummy kid with glasses.
I definitely, that trend right now that's like a hear me out cake.
Yeah.
Um, I definitely had a crush on Tom Skelton when I was a kid. I was like, he is such a little hottie in his little skeleton outfit. Um, and then Pipkin is like he's like your classic ginger kid. He's a little redhead with freckles and little bug teeth. He's so cute.
Yes.
Um, but we also, as far as differences, this is not quite as dark as the book, but it still handles the same heavy themes, and like the core messages remain the same. And it definitely, even today when I watch it, I get like choked up because it's still very
Yeah.
like deep themes, even for for now times. And then our last character is our spooky count man who lives in this insane house, first of all. We got to talk about this house design. This is the haunted house to end all haunted houses.
It is very
Uh,
spooky.
it's so, so dope. And Clavicle Moundshroud, who this as a kid, he scared the living
Oh yeah.
daylights out of me. That character design is sick. He like it's dope as hell, but he is so creepy looking.
Yeah, he is super creepy. I do feel like like this probably would have been a more popular movie in my house if he was not so creepy. Because I do remember watching it, but I remember just being like, I don't know about this guy.
I don't know. Well, and what's so wackadoo about this is that he is voiced by Leonard Nimoy,
Oh my god.
Mr. Spock himself.
Fuck.
And let me tell you, unrecognizable voice in this role. I would never have known if I wasn't
Yeah,
like an adult
I would
person
not
who
have
knew
guessed
who
that.
Leonard Nimoy
Yeah.
is. Just a masterclass in like creepy ass voice acting. I I heart Clavicle Moundshroud. He's such a creeptastic bastard, and I love him. Overall, the animation is gorgeous, and what I really love is like you can tell that this is set in the Midwest.
Hmm.
The opening scene of the movie, and it like it makes me tear up. It captures what Halloween felt like when we were kids. And the other standout here for me is the freaking music. The score of this opening scene and throughout the whole movie, composed by John Debney, who went on to do music for a little film called Hocus Pocus.
Hey.
Maybe you've heard of it. But his style, I feel, is very specific. You can hear that Hocus Pocus sound in this music, but I'm gonna say something controversial. It's better than Hocus Pocus
Ooh.
musically. He also did the music for Spy Kids and Elf.
Oh, Elf
Uh,
has great music.
it does, I know,
It
and that's
does.
yeah. So that's John Debney.
I would
He's out
say
here
not,
slaying.
not that Spy Kids doesn't. I do not recall the music of Spy Kids.
You know what's so crazy is I rewatched Spy Kids not but a week ago for absolutely no reason, and I was thinking like, oh, this music's really fun.
Were you like, damn, this is a banger?
Well, okay, but then Floop does his little song, which is, of course, Alan Cumming,
Oh yes, love Alan Coming.
and I'm listening to it. And I was watching it with my friend Ray, and I looked at her, and I was like, "There's no way this isn't Danny Elfman, right?" And I looked it up, and that one song, the Floop song, is written
Oh
by
my
Danny
god,
Elfman.
clocked.
Yeah, I was like, I just for the first time ever watching that movie, I was like, "There's positively no way that's not his music, right?"
You just like sit straight up and you're like, Daniel, is that you
Is that you? Oingo boingo in my house?
in my Spy Kids?
In my Spy Kids? But yeah, so great music. And what really gets my goat here is that you can't find it freaking anywhere.
Nah.
Um, that's not true. You can listen to it like on YouTube. It's fine. But you can't like stream it on Spotify. You
Oh
can't add
yeah.
it to a Halloween playlist. It just feels like a freaking travesty to me because I think this is some of the most Halloweeny music that exists out there, and it's just not available to us, and I'm really upset about it. But if you walk away from this podcast and you're like, Midge, I don't give an absolute F about your Halloween tree. If you do nothing else, if you don't care about the book, if you don't care about the movie, just go like type in on YouTube Halloween tree opening theme and listen to the music and tell me your life wasn't changed.
I support this.
I support this choice. So while the intro music's playing too, we get the like little Halloween tree title card. This is just a blurb about Midge things that locked in my brain for the rest of my life. There's this really beautiful, all of the, I hesitate to even call it animation. It is animation, but it's very almost like a graphic novel where everything's kind of these flat painted sets in the
Mhm.
background. And during the title card, there's these like purple and orange clouds, and there's like lightning happening. So there's all these flashing purple and orange clouds. And to this day, at 31 years of age, if the sky is doing this outside, I will yell to my husband and be like, Halloween tree sky! There's a Halloween tree sky outside!
Elementary sky.
Yeah, that a freaking beautiful film. And it ended up in 94 receiving a Daytime Emmy Award
Hey.
for outstanding writing in an animated program. And I mean, obvious. They had Ray Bradbury on their
I was gonna
side.
say, well done, Mr.
Yeah.
Bradbury. I guess you proved yourself.
I guess you can stay a classic American author. But it did really solidify its place in that time as like a Halloween film that
Hmm.
people really enjoyed. Uh, and so here's where I'm going to go on a 4-second rant, as if this whole episode has not been me ranting. So 94, it wins an Emmy. It gets a home video release because of this. But this is one of those things that for years I just didn't get to watch.
Hmm.
Could not find it. And if any of y'all here, for our younger listeners, in the 90s and like early aughts, you couldn't just go on Amazon and get a
No.
DVD of any movie your little heart desired. They would release them for certain periods of time for home video release, and then they would just be gone. Like, if you ever watch old things where Disney's like, from the vault,
Yeah.
like, they were so serious about that. They took that shit off shelves, and if you didn't
Yeah.
buy it, you were just SOL until they decided to release it again. So they released it one time in 94 after the Emmy Award, one time again in 96, which I would say, I'm guessing probably like 96 or 7 is the first time I saw this movie,
Hmm.
because that would have been when I was like old enough to know what was happening. um, but then, Penny, do you want to guess? Do you want to guess the next time that this was released on
Oh
home
man.
video?
Oh, I feel like it must have been, was it not until like the 2010s?
You are surely right.
Oh,
It was the year of our Lord 2016
goodness gracious.
when they finally re-released Halloween Tree. I was graduating college and I didn't have Halloween Tree in my possession. And I vividly remember the day that I was like, we lived here, I think, in this house. Maybe not. Maybe it was before that. Anyway, I was like sitting on a couch and was like, I wonder if they ever put that streaming anywhere. And I Googled it and it was like available on Prime. And I was like, ah! So I now I have 2 hard copies now. I keep that thing on me.
Of course.
But like, do you have something like this where it was like, there's literally no greater joy in the world than being able to watch something you haven't been able to see since you were a child?
Yeah, I have not tried, this is some, I have a few things. My family used to go to the video store that was in our supermarket,
Oh, hell yeah.
because that was a thing
Love
back
that.
in those days. And when that video store shut down, we bought some of the VHSs,
Mm-hmm.
and we owned some like extremely random, like really crappy American dubs of like anime they had like cut into movies that they
Incredible.
were just like here. And so I actually still like, I'll tell people about this and I'm like, oh, so I used to watch, I watched this, I had this VHS called Seabert, and they're like, what? And I'm like, it's about a little seal in the Arctic, and some kids go up there and they have to and they're trying to like save him from being poached, and everyone's like, what the hell are you
What
talking
are you
about?
absolutely
So
talking?
I actually have not looked at it. Maybe Seabird is on Amazon Prime now, and I could be watching the hell out of that.
That's how I felt about that PBS show about the cat, Sagwa. Is that what it
Oh
was called?
yeah, yeah.
Forever I was like, I made that up.
Like, did I invent this?
I invented a show about a cat in Asia. I'm a genius. Uh, but all this being said, this to me is one of the most underrated Halloween films of all time. And if
Mm,
you are out here watching Halloween Town and Hocus Pocus every year because they are like true Halloween films, which they are, I want to be clear.
yes.
Like, there are so few films that are specifically centered around the idea of Halloween.
Yes.
Please, if you do nothing else today, add this one to your roster. You can get the DVD online, like I said. It is available now to rent on Prime, and the last time I checked, it was also streaming for free on Tubi.
Cool.
So you've got a week today. Well, you've got a week and some change. Get your hands on a copy. Don't sleep on Halloween Tree. This is such a beautiful film with a beautiful message. And who doesn't love a story about Halloween and friendship?
Right? And you get to learn something.
And you get to learn.
I was going to say this is the ideal program for fans of this show because it's about
Yes.
Halloween and you learn something.
Yes, and it's cozy, and it's just if you're a Midge and not a Penny, and you love something that is stupid and sappy and will make you cry, this is the show for you.
There you go.
Uh, if you were a person who watched this growing up, I would love to hear about it. I always feel like, kind of similarly to Pushing Daisies, when I find like another person who knew Halloween Tree, I get really ecstatic because so few people,
Yeah.
I feel like, saw it. So please let me know if you grew up watching this and it has a special place in your heart. Or I had somebody tell me like a couple years ago that their like parents always read them the story, which I thought was really sweet. So yeah, if this has a special place in your heart, please tell me about it. And if you know where the frickin' heck I can get a copy of Party Makeup, let me know. This is actually just a Midge Munster call to action episode.
Yeah, to watch Halloween Tree, find Party Makeup, get Halloween Tree soundtrack on streaming. These
You have
are
you
the
have a
tasks.
mission. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, Spy Kids, is to. You weren't ready for a secret Spy Kids cameo episode.
No, right?
Well, thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoy this podcast as much as we enjoy making it for you, we would love for you to leave us a rating or a review wherever you listen. If you cannot leave those, which you can on Apple Podcasts, you can leave us comments now on Spotify. You can leave us comments on Podbean. I'm not even sure how that works, but you can, and we see them.
It's true.
But you can also always shoot us an Instagram DM if you can't review us where you listen. But Penny does have a very special Apple Podcast review to share with us.
I do. This review comes to us from Ariaga2, who says 5 stars, something to crow about! Exclamation point. And the review text is just a candy emoji and a corn emoji. So
And if you
thank
don't get
you.
that reference, you need to go back and listen to some of our recent episodes.
Yes. Get caught up and you will know. You'll know why we are worth crowing about.
Thank you so much for that was their previous mission, should they choose to accept it.
Yes.
So thank you for following through, agents. We really appreciate that. If you'd like to keep up with the show, you can find us over on Instagram at Ghouls Night In Pod. And if you're looking for me, I am all over the web at Midge Munster.
And you can find me at Penny Snark.
And until next time, goodbye.
Bye.